I would like very much now to move along quickly, because certainly we are late, by introducing the moderator of our next panel, Ms. Frances Simpson Allen, who will introduce the youth panel and get into some Q&A with you. So be prepared to speak now. Ms. Allen? Pleasure.
Good morning. I know you've all just had a rousing speech from Amina Mohammed, and you've heard from the Envoy on Youth. Now's the chance to hear from some fantastic youth leaders who are working here in and around the UN on what they've been doing for the post-2015 process and the United Nations processes more broadly as well. I'm going to introduce them quickly and make sure, I know you're all itching with questions, make sure that you get a chance to speak as well. So we have, to the far right, Marwan, who is the Associate Coordinator of the Pax Romana UN Advocacy Team here in New York. As a representative of this Catholic youth-led organization, Marwan collaborates extensively with the UN Major Group on Children and Youth. Next to Marwan, we have Anna. Anna is the incoming global CEO and president of ISEC International, a global platform for young people to explore and develop their leadership potential through practical experiences. The organization is in over 127 countries with 100,000 members. And last but not least, Kekshan is the president and founder of Green Hope UAE and is the global coordinator of the UN Environmental Programme for Children and Youth. She is also a youth rep to the UN High-Level Political Forum and several other bodies that I could list for about 10 minutes, but doing fantastic work. I want to hand over, but not before saying thank you to Youth Assembly for this fantastic day and exciting program, and thank you all for being here as well. First off, it would be great to hear from each of you. We've seen so much youth engagement in the last 2 years in the run-up to the Sustainable Development Agenda. Many of you were in the room on Sunday night when the agenda was agreed upon by member states after sessions that ran till 5 in the morning and people eating cookies in the conference rooms and other unusual events at the UN. But one of the challenges with youth engagement is often being tokenistic, not seen as substantive enough and meaningful. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what are some of the best examples of meaningful youth engagement that you've been a part of or that you've seen. And Marwan, how about you take us off?
Hello? Is this on? All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Frances. So first of all, good morning, and thank you all for being here, and especially thank you to those wonderful people who made this possible for us. To address your question, Frances, it's very odd for me to be up here and addressing anybody, let alone in the famous GA Hall, especially because my work has been behind the scenes in policy advocacy. And I work with the policy advocacy team. And so I can share sound bites. I haven't been doing this for very long, but I could share maybe some sound bites that I heard walking into the building when I first started doing this. And the one that strikes me the most is my mentor told me that for all those who come here, their hard work, the running around amounts to nothing unless if their work ultimately translates to something that is visible in an outcome document. This is the first thing that I heard when I walked into the UN. The second thing I heard is, it's the UN, nothing gets done, it's an inefficient big body. And I would say that the first one is partially true, the second one is untrue. When you talk about youth participation, you always have to add the word meaningful. It has to be meaningful youth participation. And the way that's done is you have to roll up your sleeves and get to work. And there's many ways to do this. I do this through policy advocacy, which is not really the most attractive way through which youth can get involved. It has to do with long nights, sleeping on the couch until 5 a.m., or not sleeping on the couch until 5 a.m. During negotiations like I did on Friday night. It has to do with reading long documents, understanding what they mean. It has to do with running after delegates, sometimes bumping into them into the bathroom and avoiding eye contact because that's not where you intended to meet them. It has to do with all sorts of things that you wouldn't normally associate with youth activism but are so important because they're behind the scenes. So there needs to be an awareness, really, of what it means to be an activist in this world, and an advocate for policy. And there also has to be an awareness of one's constituency and who one represents. And so, at least in my experience with the Major Group for Children and Youth, and the Major Group for Children and Youth, for those who are not familiar, it's a space. It's the UN-mandated space for children and youth participation at the United Nations in sustainable development, and we facilitate rather than represent. So we allow all of you to come together, and we serve as a place for you to voice your views. And I can't really speak on their behalf, but I can say that our governance structure is such that we're built in a way that we take consultations from the grassroots level and we turn that into policy on the global level. So tokenistic youth participation would be something along the lines of coming, taking a few selfies, and leaving. Meaningful youth participation, on the other hand, would be to engage at the grassroots level and to be a leader at the global level as well as the grassroots level. And what that means is almost taking the counterintuitive approach, to take the servant leader approach, as they say in management schools. At the grassroots level, us who are here, who have the advantage to and the privilege to be in New York, also have a tremendous responsibility to be those who ignite change. And to quote Jolly, change is done through movements. Movements in our hearts, movements in our souls, and movements that we ourselves institutionalize. Movements that we institutionalize on the grassroots level. So in my organization, let's say in Africa, we do tremendous amounts of capacity building, and we do education, computer education for those in university and who don't normally have access to these things. We do an Adopt a Child program, and this is not like an informal Adopt a Child program. This is university students getting together, sharing their money, pooling their resources, which are not much because, you know, university students are broke normally, at least in this country, because tuition is. And then we have another program where students rent farmland, and they actually farm. And they do this, and they contribute their, let's say, the fruits of their labor to African food security. So there are many ways to get involved, and there are ways to get involved by being leaders, but at the same time being leaders who are humble enough to recognize that we represent people who don't have the capacity, who don't have the means to represent themselves. We are people who are young leaders who have to also be aware that we have to inspire more young leaders for this to be a successful post-2015 agenda. Youth must be the torchbearers, but youth must be the torchbearers who get together in a way that allows us all to step up. It just can't be the privileged ones. We have to all be together. So that's what I would say about youth participation.
Right there and hand it over to Anna, because ISIC really sets its mission on building that capacity in young people, giving young people that exposure to spaces like this, but also very pragmatic spaces in the private sector, in civil society as well. So what, from your side, Anna, what do you see as some of the best examples of meaningful youth engagement in this space?
So there's this question that a lot of young people always have in their mind, especially when they're like in the transition between high school and what is going to be with the rest of my life after high school. So talking about engagement and action, there's a lot of things that we need to be aware. To get action done, you first need to be aware. And awareness is one of the main things that the world needs to focus on, because as much as we are sitting here in these chairs, listening of all of the many things that need to happen in the world, we must realize that we are very, very few people who is educated enough and aware of the global issues that are happening, and that's a fact. Once we create a massive campaign in awareness, then we need to create a strategy, or in a way of saying, a movement that once you're aware, then you understand that we need to be engaged actively towards something that matters to us. It can be any issue, but you have to be engaged towards it. You need to understand it, and you need to start becoming a specialist to see what is the type of impact that you clearly want to impact or change. And then the third fact, that is action, that's when you actually see, once you have all the awareness and the specialist information about a topic, Then you get to action. In ISEC, we specialize in the three of them. We try to create as many engagement events as possible to educate as many people as possible towards global issues that matters. We engage them all, of course, into conferences and forums that create this information. But last, we do a lot of mobilization all over the world to send people on ground to work in one specific field that they care about. So we don't do necessarily a lot of efforts in advocacy. We do put a lot of efforts in the action of the things that people is more interested in. So if I were to describe how can we as young people be more involved towards what we need to see in the world, I will say that there's a lot of issues that needs to be tackled, a lot of them. In ISEC as an NGO, it's a very special one because we don't focus in, I don't know, trying to solve hunger or poverty or education. We actually try to do them all. And then how can you run an organization that tries to tackle all of the issues all over the world? The answer is quite simple. These whole conversations that are happening here, the fact that you are sitting here in this chair, the fact that you woke up early this morning, it's one characteristic and it's the issue that we're trying to tackle in the world. That is called leadership. That is what we want to ignite in the world. ISEC is an organization that focuses on leadership because we profoundly believe that there's not going to be awareness, that there's not going to be engagement, and definitely it's not going to be any action if we don't have the right leaders in the world driving the changes that are needed in each local and national reality. So with that being said, I think that the key ingredient for transform a brilliant idea into something that is brilliantly executed is the person who makes it happen. So I believe that just for the fact that you are sitting here, listening to all these ideas and understanding what could be potentially your role in society, it's a great step of it. We can discuss many more ideas on how can you turn these ideas into realities, and I can show you a lot of data on what are like the social issues that young people is more focused on. If you want, I mean, you all have internet access. Go to www.isec.org/uspeak. You will find a full report in which, if you want to know what young people is thinking, there you will find the answers. And once you discover what could be your niche in which you want to specialize on, feel free to start working on it. ISEC is one of the many platforms that exist in the world. So just take action and start setting your own goals.
Anna, I think everyone in the room is going to go and join ISEC now, and definitely check out Youth Speak, the brilliant survey that was run last year by ISEC. We've talked a lot about, or we've heard a lot rather from you about the power of the individual and what that meaningful, the difference between tokenism and meaningful engagement can be. And I want to hand over to Kehkashan now, because you've done so much in so many different forums, from environmental space to sustainable development, and you're often the youngest person in the room. So what are some concrete examples that you can share with everyone here about how youth engagement has really pushed the needle and made a difference on one of the issues at hand or the course of a process that was ongoing?
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Kehkashan. I'm 15 years old, and I'm extremely excited to be here today. We, the youth, are one of the largest constituents of civil society. And there are more than half the world's population that are under the age of 30. And there are more young people today in the world than ever. And in many developing nations, youth constitute the largest percentage of the population. In accordance with our number, our needs, and our aspirations, our representation needs to be the strongest at all levels and in all forms. But in reality, this is not the case. Most of you will be aware that the UN engages with civil society through the major groups. And the first UN conference on environment and development, held in 1992, also known as the Earth Summit, recognized that achieving sustainable development required the active participation of all sectors of society and from all types of people. And Agenda 21 drew from this sentiment and formalized 9 sectors of society as the main channels through which any broad participation would be facilitated in all UN activities relating to sustainable development. And these are the major groups, and as it's been mentioned before, our constituency, the major group for children and youth, is part of that. And we share this space with 8 other major groups. So 2 decades after the Earth Summit, this was the importance of effectively engaging all sectors of society was reaffirmed by the Rio Plus 20 conference in its outcome document, The Future We Want. But now global demographics have evolved and changed drastically, and the population of youth has doubled since 1992. But the problem is our representation, our empowerment, and our voice, they haven't increased twofold. In fact, our marginalization has become even more magnified. We are the future generations, and any developmental agenda that is discussed should have us at its center in all aspects of agenda setting, policy making, and implementation. So I was 12 years old when I started my own youth organization called Green Hope. We started off with 5 members, and we now have over 1,000 members internationally. I started off with the UN processes when I was 11, and thanks. And I'd just like to say that age has nothing to do with capability. Each one of us has the potential to do something great to bring the change about in the world. Agenda 21 had given us the framework for engagement, but it has not evolved as yet. It needs to evolve to actually facilitate the representation in proportion to the size and needs of our constituency. Most of the UN bodies, be it ECOSOC, UNEP, or UNFCCC, have youth engagement programs. But their scope of representation is still limited. For example, in 2014, UNEP had 272 accredited organizations, out of which only 18 were from children and youth. And that's why we need more children and youth or accredited organizations. And another problem is age. UNFCCC doesn't allow anyone under the age of 18 into their climate change conferences. And you don't need to be 18 to learn about climate change or to even face its negative impacts. So how can over 3.5 billion young people ever hope to have their voices heard at the UN if we continue in this archaic mode of representation? But that being said, the UN has come a really long way. And this was reflected in the adoption of the post-2015 Developmental Agenda draft resolution, which actually did take into account some of the views of the children and youth. But we cannot become complacent because there's so much more to be done.
Thank you, Kekashan. So we're going to take a few questions from the floor. We don't have very much time, so I think we can take 2 questions. So a show of hands and ask you to be brief, please. Hopefully, yeah, the lady in the back with your hand up. Yeah, please press the button to activate your microphone. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Grace. I'm from Shanghai, China. Ms. Mohammed just mentioned about UN's promoting peace and security. I was wondering because, like in many cases, like in the case of US and China, in terms of the South China Sea, we are having conflicts, and also many parts of the world, and not just peace and security, also many other problems. So, and the world leaders are thinking about and working on the problems. So my question is, as youth, how are we gonna to be prepared to before we step into the problems and take action? Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the question there was about mentioning the role of peace and security and how youth will prepare and be engaged in those processes as well as sustainable development. I'm going to take another one so our panelists can answer two at a time. Yeah, the gentleman here.
Hello, good morning everyone. This is Joel. I'm a citizen of United States. I'm living in New York. So my question is, I'd like to first of all welcome all of you, my hometown. This is my first time in Youth Assembly. My question is I saw she's from UAE. What they two ladies, gentlemen there, what they're doing for the education for children, Middle East or some South Asian or somewhere else. I visited Middle East and all over so many countries, but I don't see they properly they find the education or they find the money to how do they build their life and how their bright future, what they can do and what we can do.
Can you just repeat the question part very clearly at the end there?
They have any plan for the education for children?
What is being done for education of children in this space?
Yeah, so
Okay.
then what we can do for their future or we can do for the future generation, then we can learn from there, we can teach them something else too.
Okay, so emerging leaders and bringing up the next generation of youth leaders. So to our panel, who would like to take on those two questions? Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I think that the answer can tackle both questions. As I was saying before, the fundamental solution for many aspects of the world is leadership. And when we say that we need to focus on one specific issue, I think that it's quite hard to find a consensus on which should be the issue that we should tackle. Talking specifically about children's education or what exactly are we doing about children's, it comes back to the example that I was saying. What we need to ignite in young people is the capacity for them to believe in themselves. As she was saying, there's nothing that limits us, not age, not titles, not resources, it's all in you. As an example of things that have been done by many organizations, I'm going to put an example of ISEC specifically, or of myself, of the amount of things that you can do when you're young. We, in ISEC, specifically in the national chapter of Colombia, we realized that education, especially in children, was extremely bad. I mean, still is, but then as young people, members of ISEC, we decided to change that. And then we approached the government and we told them, we have the world's largest youth mobility program in the world. We have sent more than 100,000 people on exchange in the last 4 years. And we can assure you that although we are 18 years old, although we are 23 years old, we can bring the best English teachers for children's educations. Of course, they didn't believe us. If the CEO of an NGO is telling you that she can bring over 200 people to Colombia to teach English to little kids, the first reaction of the prime minister or the education minister will say, thank you, but no, you don't have enough experience, you don't even have a working title, sorry, but no. At the end of the day, it was all a matter of showing with live data and showing with your responsibility that not because we are young people, we are irresponsible or anything, that it can be done. And we did it. When I was only 24 years old, we signed a contract with the government of Colombia worth over $1 million to bring these people in there. And right now, it created a movement. It was the first pilot that we run, and every semester, we're bringing over 1,000 teachers to bring education of quality in the learning of English in the public schools of Colombia. That's one of the examples of what you can do with children. I think that, honestly, very, very personally speaking, communication and learning a second language is one of the world's biggest barriers because we're unable to understand each other. But that's one out of the many examples that can be done. So the main answer there is that it needs you. It needs your idea. It needs your persistence. And it needs your understanding of what is the issue that you want to tackle and have a clear plan and a clear deadline on how you want to do it.
Anna, let me pick up that point and... Very good. Let me pick up that point, and we have run out of time. In 30 seconds to our other two panelists, what is your advice to everyone in this room walking out of the room today, the concrete action they can take, as Anna's just given some?
Sorry. I have two advices. One is don't be afraid, and the other is don't be discouraged with the small victories, because eventually they pay off. To the first one, don't be afraid to get involved, to defy expectations, but also don't be afraid to get messy and to go beyond your comfort zone. Read the policy, read the documents, Agenda 21, the future we want. Also, HLPF 67-290, that one's very important because youth have a major role to play in follow-up and review, which is how we're going to keep the governments accountable for post-2015. Do your homework and don't be afraid, and please just enjoy it as well. You are the future leaders.
From my side is that all of the notes that you're taking in your notebooks, go to Google and start looking what is the next thing that is going to happen once you leave these facilities. Join an NGO, create your own NGO, start doing something, because all of those ideas in your notebook, it's not going to change the world. I do believe that you have the power to create something that is bigger and that will be beyond what you can imagine. But it has to start with something. So, like I was saying, feel free to join any organization to create your own and start. And don't wait until you're ready. Don't wait until you have more time. Don't wait until exams are done, because there's never going to be a perfect time. You just have to do it and make it happen with the reality that you have right now. That's it.
Thank you, Anna.
As William Shakespeare said, it's not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves. If we are to save our tomorrow, we need to take action today. And the onus is on all of us to demand the change for the well-being of the future generations. And it's probably time to emphasize that if we cannot be at the UN needs to come to us. And in today's ever-changing world, decentralization is the buzzword. We are the future, and remember that sustainable development cannot become a reality if we're left behind. So just do it.
I want to thank our distinguished panel, who are all doing such amazing things. And it's not very often that I feel old working at the UN, so it's a good feeling, let me tell you. And thank you all for being here over the next few days. You're going to hear from so many fantastic people, but as you've heard from this panelist, and as you can see by all the great work they're doing, it's never too soon and you're never too young to really start engaging. I'm going to give you very concrete actions for what I think you should all be doing, which is going to action2015.org to get involved in all of the advocacy work that's happening before the Sustainable Development Goals are adopted in September by all of your presidents and prime ministers, and also checking out globalgoals.org, where you can also learn more about them. So thank you all today, and thank you to our fantastic panel and to Youth Assembly.